point number 14. Okay, Barbara, thanks for inviting me into your lovely home, and here we are on this spring day. And I wonder if you could tell me, please, your first connection with Rodborough. You may well have been born here, I don't know. Over to you.
Well, I was actually born just down in the village below here, and what was then Stanfields. The post office decided to change the names and the numbers of the houses, and they are all now some number Kingscourt Lane. But our house was number 1, close style, Stanfields, Kingscourt.
So if you lived in Kingscourt, you, as people do today, I suppose, they see themselves as definitely separate from Rodborough.
Well, it is Rodborough. It's Stanfields, Rodborough.
So,
yes.
So you saw yourself as a Rodborough person,
oh,
not
yes,
a Kingscourt person.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So, do you want to talk about your early days at all in Kingscourt?
Well, the early days down in Kingscourt Lane, we were one whole community. We knew everyone from Walkley Hill right through to the village, the little village of Kingscourt. And thinking about it the other day, I could still name everyone who lived in the old houses, right through to the little post office at the top of the gastros.
Right. I get the feeling from talking to your mother-in-law and other people that there will be a lot more conversation in the street than today. A lot more people just talking to each other, really.
Yes.
Would that be true?
Yes, they always talked to each other, and the other thing they did was they helped each other as neighbours. If it was pouring with rain and the person was out, they would go and fetch their washing in and take it into their own homes, and then it would be there dry when the people came home.
So much more of a community.
Much more of a community, yes.
And that's you now going back to before the Second World War, during the Second World War?
1938, 40. I was born in 1938, so it would have been 1940. I can remember right from being a young child, and the neighbours being very helpful to each other.
And I suppose what I'm asking you, Barbara, is that you think that community spirit went on after the Second World War?
It definitely went on after the Second World War, yes.
When do you reckon it began to decline?
I think when the local people moved out and the new estates were built, and then of course the older people died, and then that left just a few people and new people moving in.
So you think the 1960s?
About the 1960s, yes.
So the generation, if you like, that taught the younger generation that kind of community outlook, they began to die away.
They began to die away, yes.
And local people moved out, other people moved in, and so a new feeling began to shape itself. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
The changes in the landscape, apart from the development of the new estates, when you look out from your lovely setting here, it's probably much the same, is it? And compared with when you moved in, do you want to talk about when you moved in? Well,
it's totally different because it was all fields. We could look down on fields, and the cart horses and the haymaking, and the cattle used to walk from Stringer's Farm along Kingscourt Lane and into the field down here, down at the bottom of the road. And also there was of course orchards, and from Walkley Hill down to the corner where the new houses start, there was a market garden, and there was iron railings and a row of lime trees, and then you came to the two farms. There was Walters's farm on one side, which was supposed to be a model farm, and James's farm on the right, which was still there, called Stringer's Farm.
Oh, right, so Farm James Stringer's Farm. Okay, gotcha. So much more of a farming, agricultural feel then, let's say 50, 60 years ago. And you need a car up here, I know you do. But how much do you think motor cars have changed things around in the community in your life?
People just don't walk and see the countryside like they used to. It's a much faster life. People dash from A to B instead of walking and taking their time. So they don't meet people so much and talk to them.
the feeling I also had from your mother-in-law was of course the way that people could talk in the shops, and I almost had the feeling from listening to her that the co-op was almost like a second home to people in the way that they could talk to each other. So perhaps you'd like to talk about how shopping habits have changed.
Well, we had a little post office at the top of Gastrel's, and we would go up. We could walk up there as children with no fear of sort of meeting any strangers or anything. We knew everyone, and you could go up to the shop, and the children could go and do the shopping. And Mrs. Cant owned the post office then.
Okay,
yes, and we could all talk to each other in there.
Yeah. And I suppose that's a good point, that children would have acquired these habits too, of talking to other children and talking in the street and playing in the street and doing the errands, as opposed to being, in front of computer games or whatever it might be these days. So what about the things you used to do as a child? What sort of, Well, we definitely played in the fields. We used to climb trees and swing from branch to branch and paddle in the streams. We used to dam the streams up and make a puddle, a pool, and play in it. And also we had the old iron hoops that came off of tire hoops. Right, okay.
And we used to run those down the road. There was not enough cars around to bother about them. And wooden tops. We used to play with whips and tops down in the street.
So it would be staggering if we talked to school children at Rodborough today to point out to them it would be possible to play all day if you were a boy or a girl without spending any money, probably.
It was very possible, yes.
So and George Evans told me he'd go out for the day with a bit of bread and a bit of cheese in his pocket. So what about a girl? How would a girl's playing day be different from a boy going up on the common all day? How a typical play day before you were 10 or whatever.
Well, we used to take bread and jam in a little. It was a paper bag then, not a plastic bag, and a bottle of pop. And we used to have very old bikes. We didn't have posh bikes. They were ones that Dad or family would make up for us out of oddments. And we used to go up onto Rodborough Common and ride up and down what they call the dillies, or the actual dips on the common. And we used to have a picnic and spend all day just playing on the common.
Yeah, happy days. So I think we're all happy now. There's no doubt about that. But is it possible that do you think that people could have been happier way back then, even though they had less? I mean, this is something that's beginning to occupy my mind. So if I could ask you that question, accepting that you're a happy person now, but so not necessarily talking about yourself, but kind of general statements about, do you think people were happier way back then, even though they had less money, less